Hey, and welcome to a new Planet Coaster series where we are going to be recreating Main Street Station from Disneyland in Anaheim, California. It's always been one of my favorite buildings at the park, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn what it takes to do a exact one-to-one recreation in Planet Coaster. So as you can see, we have placed down a bunch of billboards, and we have just used Photoshop to cut the satellite images so that they are proper scale for Planet Coaster, and that way we know that everything we're building will be in scale and in the right place. I learned how to do this from a guy on YouTube called Operator. He's also very big in the Planet Coaster community, and he has a nice video where he just shows you the basics of how to set something up like this. So I will put a link to that in the description if anyone is interested. Because this build is so small scale, and actually most stuff at Disneyland in California is a very small scale because budget wasn't enormous back in the day, but because everything's so small and everything in Planco is so big, almost everything in this build is made from these Hydro beams. Hydro is another person in the Planet Coaster community. He makes a bunch of awesome Theme Maker Toolkit stuff, and it's perfect for small detailed buildings like this. So you'll see that while the piece count is enormous, I'm able to get tons of detail that you would not otherwise be able to get with pieces in the base game. You'll notice I placed down these green art shapes on the floor, and I just did those because as the images are being stretched, the resolution obviously isn't great. So it's sometimes difficult to tell where the edges of the building really are, so I just kind of did my best estimate of where everything laid and then put down those green art shapes just so I have a basic, sharper image of the floor plan of the building. You'll also notice that I do not have dual monitors, which means that I am using Planet Coaster in windowed mode, and then I have Google Images, and you'll see later in the video I switched to some YouTube videos on the other half of my screen. And while that maybe isn't ideal for your viewing, I do think it's interesting because it at least shows you what I'm looking at as I'm building, so you can kind of see where I'm getting the stuff from and the kind of pictures I have to look at. And the hardest challenge is there aren't a lot of large, high-resolution pictures of just buildings like this, because most people take the picture of the Mickey face and then move on, but they don't expect someone to be looking at how many slats are in the window above the door. So it was a little bit challenging to find those details, but I made do, just Google Images, and then on YouTube I was able to use a bunch of videos from Fresh Baked, and they basically go to Disneyland every week and film and ride the rides, and so they have a huge amount of videos where they walk into the train station or whatever, and then I have perfect views of all the details up close. So that ended up being super useful. Here we're doing the concrete bits above the door. Again, I wish that Planet Coaster had two door pieces that I could just pop in there, but sadly I had to do everything by hand in order to get exactly what I wanted. Another thing that's really time consuming with these builds is that these Hydro beams are so small that Planet Coaster clearly was not designed to handle a piece so small, because the advanced move tool actually covers the piece, so it can be incredibly tedious when you're trying to move these 10-centimeter beams around, because you can't even really see what you're doing until you've placed it. Here I'm just moving over what I built, because as it turns out there is some symmetry to this building, even though there is not a ton of it. The main thing that is all over this building actually is this one door, and that's why I decided that it was important to really put in the time and make this door exactly right, considering there are probably 8 of them on this building. I really wanted to make sure that this was as accurate as possible. Here you can see me starting to use the YouTube videos. This is when people are on the train just leaving the station, but I get this great close-up of the detail work above that door, which is super helpful. Here, I'm working on this middle part, and I need to put in 2 windows either side of this door, and I realized that I have goofed badly. Everything was too narrow. All the work I just did was for nothing. And so I woke up the next morning and redid everything. I had to redo the entire door because the door was probably 5% too big. Luckily, I now had the experience of building it once, so I didn't have to look at the pictures much. I just had to kind of go through the motions again. And upon first watch, you're probably thinking, why on earth are you putting in 3 more hours to redo everything you just did? And the real important thing is that in a recreation like this, as soon as you're off by 1 centimeter, once you get to the roof, the 1 centimeter becomes 10 centimeters. Then once you get to the flagpole, everything just gets super off. So I just wanted to make sure that everything from the start is exactly as accurate as I can make it, because that'll just make things later on much easier. Now that we've adjusted our little green floor plan that was completely wrong from the start, I have room to build these windows, and these are done pretty much the same way as the doors. That little concrete trim with the decorative piece in the middle, and then just more hydro beams to make it look like a window. Here I'm putting in some strange metal covering that I think also houses the little gutter drainage from the roof. I'm not sure what else this pipe box thing is for, but I think there might be a furnace or something inside, so it could also act as a chimney. Not sure on that, but definitely an interesting detail. Here I'm just placing the train in front to see kind of how the train looks in front of the station. Sadly, Planet Coaster being Planet Coaster, the train is slightly out of scale. I noticed that it takes about 6 or 7 Planet Coaster train cars to be the same length as 5 of the real Disneyland ones. So the train does look a little bit small in front of the station, but it's not too bad, and I think it's better to have the station be truly exact, rather than building towards the incorrect Planko scale. Here we're starting on the little gutter roof decorative piece. You'll notice I put in those Christmas lights. That was just to make sure that they would fit later on when I installed those into the building. But at this point, everything was lining up well. I was feeling much better about it, and looking back, I am so glad that I went back and fixed everything I had done to make it proper, because as I'm recording this, I've already done quite a bit more of this build, meaning that there will be more episodes to come shortly, and so far everything is going really well. I have not had as big of a disaster as I had that one at the beginning, so definitely things are going well. This is another kind of tricky piece, trying to make these super ornate little arches that hold up the roof. I was hoping I could just use some of the in-game things, but again, they just weren't quite what I was looking for, so it did end up being mostly hydro beams for this as well. And if you haven't noticed by now, I apologize if anyone was hoping this would be a blueprint that you can put into your park. Absolutely no chance. This thing is already 4,000 pieces, I believe, when I finished the bottom floor the other day. So unless this was going to be like a 3 or 4 part blueprint, I do not think that this will be going up on the workshop. Here I'm getting to finally put in that rain gutter. And then also this little metal band that holds it in place. And this for me is like the reward of doing all that tedious stuff, is that I can finally go in and do what I enjoy the most, which is the tiny little details on everything, like this little wooden storage box that they have out front. They have one on each side, and I just again use this video from Fresh Baked where they're on the train, and yeah, I just recreated that little box there. While I am using almost entirely TMTK pieces, I'm trying my best to avoid needing any custom pieces specifically for this build, and that is why you'll notice in the YouTube video on the right there's a little red fire bucket, and I was not able to figure out a way to do that really well, so I did leave that off. I hope you'll forgive me, I'm very sorry, but I did not think that that was either A, worth using 500 pieces to make the bucket out of beams, or worth making a custom piece to put in there, so just skip that. Looks just fine without it. And yeah, we move on. Copy and pasted that little storage box, and I believe that is it for the episode. We added in some tiny little other details, but this is what we have. This is many hours work. Time-lapse was probably sped up 10 to 15 times throughout this video, but yeah, I'm really happy with how it's coming out. I'm really excited to show you guys more, and thank you all for watching.